Okay, I'm Frank. My partners are Brown. Our survey was crime. The purpose of our study by Southeast level crime on campus. The study is supporting new policy procedures on campus, administrators defining funds to increase. Two variables for the people often worried about crimes on campus. Our survey these questions from always ratio level measurement with the true zero. Our Y variable was our students feeling on campus. Our survey asked how safe they felt walking during different times. Students were able to use a Likert scale to answer to the equidistant measurement variable is level measurement. How often students worried about having effect on student may feel on campus. Our null hypothesis was that often students are worried about their overall safety. Our alternative is a negative. This team means often are worried about this and their
For step 2, we set the significance level and it's at 0.05. We skip step 3 and then we move on to step 4 and we determine the p-value and compare it to the significance level. The t-value calculated was negative 2.721. The alt hypothesis signals we are performing a lower tail test. Therefore, we divided the value under the column sig by 2. Step 5, the p-value is 0.0055, less than the significance level of 0.05. We observed that this was a rare event under the null hypothesis, and since the p-value is less than the significance level, we reject the null and accept the alternative. Step 6 is that alpha is 0.05. We have significant evidence to conclude there is a negative association between how often students are worried about crimes on campus and their overall safety feeling. And this is our scatter plot. And the scatter plot shows us that there's a negative relationship. As our X values increase, we observe a smaller Y value. The relationship of the scatter plot is weak. Our values are dispersed, and there is a linear relationship among our data. Every 1 unit of X correspondence with a Y value. Regression assumption check. Was the data randomly selected from the population? No, our data was collected using a convenience sampling method. For this research assignment, we will assume our sample represents a random sample of students from the population. Are the X and Y variable measured at interval or ratio? Is a ratio level measurement, and our Y value safety feeling is the interval level.
Okay, so next we check to see if the empirical distributions of the X and Y variables are normally distributed. When you look at the histogram, you can see it has a normal distribution because most of the data is concentrated towards the middle instead of the ends. We determined there was an X and Y linear relationship. When we look at the scatter plot, we're able to plot the slope. So the linearity assumption has also been met. Are the residuals normally distributed with a mean of 0? So a residual is the difference between the observed Y value and the predicted Y value. So if you look at the histogram of the residuals, they have a fairly normal distribution. It's not overly skewed to the left or the right, and the graph mimics a bell shape. Are the residuals not correlated with X? So when we look at the Pearson correlation coefficient value that was calculated by SPSS, it's equal to 0.0. This indicates it's a very weak relationship between the independent variable and the residuals. This assumption has also been met. do the residuals have a constant variance across all levels of X? So we made a scatter plot between how often students were worried about and the residuals. And the scatter plot shows that there's no real relationship between the independent variable and the residuals, and that no true pattern was observed.